namaskar, friends, and welcome once again. Now we are entering a territory where we are going to talk about the second generation writer, Jhumpa Lahiri. Jhumpa Lahiri is one of the most acclaimed contemporary names when we talk about Indian diaspora, and we'll see that she has contributed significantly in unraveling the layered lives of diasporic people in her works. She is not only celebrated novelist but also short story writer and is best known for her exploration of identity, displacement, and the immigrant experience, particularly within the Bengali American context. And her works often delve into themes of cultural hybridity, isolation, and the quiet, often painful process of assimilation. So, she was born as Nilanjana Sudesana Lahiri on the 11th July 1967 and is a British American author, widely recognized for exploration of immigrant experience, particularly that of East Indians in America, and for her elegant direct prose style. So there are a lot of things that make her different as a writer when we compare her to other writers. I'll come to that. And she is the recipient of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction and the Payne Hemingway Award for her short story collection, Interpreter of Maladies, and it was considered a phenomenon when it was published in 1999. Um, Her other works, comprise her first novel, The Namesake, uh, Unaccustomed Earth, The Lowland, and since 2015, she has also written fiction, essays, and poetry in Italian. And these are her Italian works. Uh, Altre parole, I don't know how to pronounce it. So in English, it is translated as other words. De mi trovo. In English, it is whereabouts. Ricontai Romani. So her writings often center on the Indian immigrant experience in America, cultural dislocation, generational conflict, and the search for belonging, dealing with autobiographical elements, chronicling the nuances of immigrant psychology and family dynamics. So all of us know that she was born out of immigrant parents, and she herself, has been trying, not only through her writings but in her personal life as well, uh, to understand her true identity. And when we talk about her most celebrated works, Interpreter of Maladies, as I said, which was published in 1999, it's a collection of nine short stories delving into the lives of Indian and Indian American characters, exploring the themes of cultural dissonance, loneliness, and the search for belonging, often set between India and the United States. The Namesake 2003, the novel follows Gogol Ganguly, the American born son of Bengali immigrants, as he navigates the challenges of cultural identity, generational conflict, and the meaning behind his unusual name, which is neither Indian nor American but is a Russian name. Asima, his mother, is one of the most powerful characters in this novel. Asima's nostalgia for India and Gogol's discomfort with his name and heritage exemplify the diasporic crisis. So, this is a richly layered text, and we'll be having more detailed discussion in one of the upcoming classes. The Lowland, another novel by Jhumpa Lahiri, which published in 2013, it examines the immigrant experience through the lives of Subhas and Gauri, who moved from India to the US. The novel delves into issues of political ideology, family loyalty, personal tragedy, and cultural adaptation as well. So, her Unaccustomed Earth, another collection of short stories after Interpreter of Maladies, further examines the lives of second generation Indian immigrants. The stories focus on familial relationships, identity, and the lasting impact of migration. Whereabouts, which was originally written in Italian and was translated by uh, the writer herself into English. Uh, it was her first novel written in Italian, and it presents the introspective narrative of an unnamed woman living in an unnamed Italian city. Um, some critics identify uh, this protagonist with the author herself. The novel meditates on solitude, place, and the search for meaning, and so turns out to be another very interesting tale from Jhumpa Lahiri. The first generation diasporic writers, as I said, had different challenges and different takes on the lives of diaspora, having spent considerable years uh, of their formative time in India. They moved to these Western countries at a ripe age, and really struggled to get assimilated. Why? Because they could never reconcile completely to uh, the changed reality, and always felt a pull between two opposing forces of a home culture and host culture. And as a result, some of them tried to forge middle path, while some of them realized that it is something that cannot be really resolved. So the gap between east and west, between India and the host country, uh, remained intact. So uh, the first generation diasporic writers, which include Anita Desai, Kamla Markande, Bharati Mukherjee, Salman Rushdie, Chitra Banerjee, Divakaruni, Amitabh Ghosh, and Amit Chaudhary, were generally born in their homeland and migrated as adults, and their works highlight the themes of nostalgia, struggle for adaptation and assimilation, pain of exile and longing, reconstructing the past, reflecting on community life, and highlighting the challenges of being peripheralized and marginalized in the host country. So, Bharti Mukherjee, of course, may be treated as an exception, but nonetheless, her challenges compared to the challenges of Jhumpa Lahiri were certainly different, because she was born in India and left India at a very mature age. Uh, Contrarily, the second generation diasporic writers that include Jhumpa Lahiri, Meera Syal, Hari Kunzru, and Sunetra Gupta, they are commonly identified as children of immigrants born or raised in the host country. They grow up negotiating two cultures, the heritage of their parents and the dominant culture of their new homeland. Thus, their works highlight cultural hybridity, dual identity, and intergenerational conflict, and a negotiation between old ways at home and new ways outside. So, they are always characterized by a split sensibility and different tensions, cultural tensions in their life. The Ballista points out, and I quote, belonging to the second generation and moreover being born in the UK, this is about Jhumpa Lahiri, she would not fit properly into the category of post colonial migrant, though this is not the main reason why she cannot be considered a post colonial writer. Nonetheless, she shares with it the same feelings of displacement and alienation, both in her country of birth and upon returning to her parents' homeland. So, she belongs to a second generation uh, diaspora, and she also has a unique problem. Although she is more comfortable in her host country, being born and brought up there, because she has picked up the language as her first language and the culture right since her childhood. But nonetheless, the feeling of otherness which persists outside compels her to think whether she really belongs like anybody else belongs in that country. And well, the parents always try to, make her understand her Indian heritage and culture, and that leaves her confused how to balance the two, because she finds that outside world is different, drastically different from what she is taught inside. And so it is a sort of double displacement, a displacement that consequently involves a reflection on identity which cannot be but hybrid. And that is the reason, the second generation kids have to lead a hybrid life, because they are not at ease in their native culture or in the host culture, and they have to really negotiate some kind of identity between them. So, according to Bauman, identity is a liquid concept which lacks its solid points of reference and needs continuous renegotiations across languages, cultures, and geographies, just as a liquid lacks a definite shape. And this is also applicable to the identity of these second generation diasporic subjects. Well, their identity is liquid, and so it does not really take any particular shape, and is always fluid, always adapting, always evolving. So Jhumpa Lahiri was born to Bengali parents and is a diasporic writer of second generation belonging to Indian American origin, progeny of three countries, born in London, belongs to Indian roots, and was raised in the Rhode Island, US. Thus, her diasporic sensibility contributes to globalization, migration, and cultural diversity in an interconnected world. And that is what provides her a ready made sensibility to really talk with some kind of conviction on the lives of these immigrant people like her. So, her fiction looks like a mosaic, a portrait of an Indian American family. In other words, while each piece of work is granted a sort of autonomy through its own unique narrative style, diverse and unrelated characters, various locales, and a somewhat distinguishable set of formal strategies gives the semblance of unity through relation to an external world. So her purpose seems actually to narrate the thread of human relationships, the lack of communication between people in new contexts where they experience the same sense of loss. So her creative world is deeply informed by her own experiences, in three different continents, in three different cultures. So her characters often grapple with the tension between their inherited Indian culture and the expectations of their adopted country, as we see in the namesake, very much like the writer herself. In the namesake, we find how Gogol struggles with his unusual name, and also finds it difficult to, really balance the duality of his identity as both Indian and American. And so it gives rise to a lot of tension in his life. Lahiri's characters all often inhabit a liminal space caught between the traditions of their uh, native heritage and the demands of assimilation in the West. And this third space becomes a site of negotiation and identity formation, as seen in the namesake and the lowland. So we find that her characters, like the writer herself, are always trying to balance their native tradition with the uh, demands of the host culture, and they try to negotiate their identity out of it. So in the lowland, we find that Gauri demonstrating a willingness to embrace her adopted land. Says California was her only home right away. She had adapted to its climate. So, she moves from India to America, and there, you know, she claims that now California is her only home, and she is adapted to its climate. Kakutani remarks, and I quote, many of her characters are Indian immigrants trying to adjust to a new life in the United States, and their cultural displacement is a kind of index of a more essential sense of dislocation. Lahiri's characters realize, however, that America offers them, or at least their children, opportunities they would never have at home. And uh, we always find that, the lure of America, the American dream, the opportunities, the economic opportunities, the opportunities to lead a quality life in America always takes precedence over the native traditions to which her characters are deeply attached. But at the same time, this has its own price, because it does not happen automatically. The characters have to make sincere efforts in order to, balance between their Indian cultural heritage and the demands of the new society. And they know that, there is no going back for them, although they keep on feeling nostalgic about their home, about their families back home, about the Indian food, Indian way of life, and so on and so forth. So, an inquiry has been set on Lahiri's identity, questioning whether Lahiri is a Bengali, Asian American, post colonial universal, which questions her degree to which she represents her subject matter accurately and authentically. There are a lot of people who question her authority to talk about Indian culture, because they believe that, she herself has accepted that English was the first language that she learned, and she still finds it difficult to read and write in Bengali, and still continues to explore the lives of Bengali people and Bengali culture. And that is why this question is also pertinent, whether she is really authentic, or she really holds the authority to talk about them. But uh, when we look at her fictional world, we always find that she so beautifully blends her American sensibility and upbringing with her uh, nuanced understanding of uh, Indian culture, and that is reflected in her narratives as well. Thus, for Lahiri, identity seems to be nothing but a multi layered concept where Bengali, British, US, and Italian cultures and traditions, as well as the experience of dislocation and hybridity, overlap randomly in an endless movement. So, when she talks about the life of these diasporic people, she seems to be loud and clear in her approach to their life, which also parallels her own life. That when you are making a move from one place to another, uh, this is not a geographic location change alone. This also changes your psychology, your sociology, the way you live, the way you take care of yourself. And so, this demands you to be flexible and fluid. And that is why, your culture does not remain intact in the process. Rather, it is a negotiated cultural identity, and you are living in a hybrid space rather than a pure culture. And that is why, Lahiri is also qualified enough to talk about this kind of cultural space, because she herself has inhabited one, born to diasporic parents living abroad in Britain and in US. She has undergone several cultural transformations as far as her host culture is concerned, and so she is better qualified to talk about it. Lahiri shares and displays her untroubled use of English. And why not? Because this was the language that she first picked up. So, unlike the other writers who learnt English as their second language, she is almost a native, and so finds it very easy to narrate whatever comes to her mind. So, she shares and displays in her untroubled use of English her plain and elegant prose, believing in the power of literature's universal fluency to convey stories regardless of language. Contrarily, Amitav Ghosh, also from Bengali descent, enters into linguistic experimentation. For instance, in Sea of Poppies, he uses a heteroglossic strategy by mixing English words with Bengali, Bhojpuri, Hindi, or Arabic words. So, the luxury that Amitav Ghosh has, knowing several Indian languages, the same is not the case with Lahiri, for whom the primary language remains English, although now she has started in Italian as well. So, uh, here the experimentation with the language of Amitav Ghosh contrasts to Lahiri's sticking to plain, elegant English prose. She explains that it must be seen as a double estrangement, since he cannot read nor write Bengali, which is thus itself a foreign language to her. As he says, I have always perceived a disjunction between it and me. As a result, she writes in other words, I consider my mother tongue paradoxically a foreign language too. So for her, Bengali is not her mother tongue, it is like any other foreign language. And so, this also accounts for her hybrid identity, or a fluid identity, which is not uh, really aligned to one particular language or mother tongue. She remarks, in other words, and I quote, ever since I was a child, I have belonged only to my words. I don't have a country, a specific culture. If I did not write, if I did not work with words, I would not feel that I am present on the earth. So, see, uh, very frankly, she admits that she was born to be a writer, and it is her writing that is her uh, true identity, rather than going by her cultural and national identity. uh, People should know her for her words, for her expressions, for her stories, because she believes that her true existence on this earth is not her cultural identity, but her identity as a writer. Since every language is strictly tied to a geographical territory, living in the US, where she does not readily encounter the Italian language, places her in a peculiar double exile. And I quote, almost as we met, Italian and I were separated. My yearning seems foolish, and yet I feel it. How is it possible to feel exiled from a language that is not mine, that I don't know? Maybe because I am a writer who does not belong completely to any language. So, she talks about her own fluid identity, even that relates to her language use as well, although she picks up English as her first language and finds it difficult to really write or read in her mother tongue Bengali, her fascination for Italian, takes her to Italy, but still she is yet to decide if she has found her true identity. She believes that, um, all these languages, uh, are different from each other, and I'm making use of them, but I really belong to any of them, rather I belong to all of them. So later, in other words, he further writes, when I read in Italian, I feel like a guest, a traveler. Nevertheless, what I am doing seems a legitimate, acceptable task. When I write in Italian, I feel like an intruder, an impostor. The work seems counterfeit, unnatural. I have realized that I have crossed over a boundary, that I feel lost in flight. I am a complete foreigner. When I gave up English, I gave up my authority. I am sicky rather than secure. I am weak. So, these are still initial, realizations when she uh, decided to switch from English to Italian, and from US to Italy. She realized that, she is on a shaky ground. Uh, but then she questions whether uh, English gave that authority to her, and she can certainly say that, she is authoritative thinking and writing in English language. So when we look at her fictional world, we find that she blends the themes of identity and belonging, that is very, very important to her. She writes in a minimalist style, as her prose is known for clarity, precision, and emotional restraint. And she always avoids, ornate language. um, Instead, she favors a quiet introspective tone that highlights the internal conflicts of her characters. She creates complex characters. Apparently, they look very simple, like Gogol Ganguly. Apparently, he looks very simple, but exploration of his character shows how he grapples with his name, his identity, and pull off the two different cultures, making him a complex character. And she is the one who also loves to make linguistic experimentation. As I told you, she started writing in English, now she has moved on to write in Italian as well. If we talk about the legacy and influence that she has left uh, on the writers, you know she has significantly shaped contemporary literature with her nuanced portrayals of diasporic life, and her ability to write about culturally specific experiences with universal appeal has made her a voice of global resonance. Her literary contributions have won her prestigious awards, including the Pulitzer Prize. And when we compare her to other diasporic writers, we find that there are a lot of similarities and lot of difference as well, even if we are looking at the same reality, since all of us are different as individuals with different set of skills and different set of experiences that have set our creative imagination. We find that she is different from all other writers. So when we compare her to writers like Bharati Mukherjee and Anita Desai, her predecessors, we find that there are interesting similarities and distinctions on how each one of them explores identity, migration, and cultural hybridity. While Jhumpa Lahiri is a Bengali American, Bharati Mukherjee is an Indian American, and Anita Desai is of Indian German descent. And Jhumpa Lahiri mostly, talks about the locations in US and Italy, Bharati Mukherjee's forte was talking about life in US and Canada, and Anita Desai wrote about life in India and US. And you know, when we talk about the identity and belonging, Lahiri was inward, conflicted, and nostalgic when it comes to identity, while the characters of Mukherjee underwent assertive transformation. And Desai always found it difficult to reconcile to these different pools, and so her characters, suffered what is called fragmented identity, and they suffered existential crisis as well. Immigration for Lahiri is an emotional, it leaves emotional impact on the family ties, and so she tries to understand the emotional response of diasporic people to her, to their diasporic situation. While in the case of Bharati Mukherjee, it had political and personal reinvention as its focus, and in Desai, it resulted in what is called psychological alienation of characters. When we talk about the cultural hybridity of these three writers, we find that Lahiri, in a very subtle way, tries to negotiate between the worlds. Mukherjee, on the other hand, is outrightly trying to embrace pluralism and multiculturalism, while Desai talks about detachment and divided self in a diasporic space. So, finally, if we look at the ideological positioning on immigration, we find that these three writers are different from each other. While Anita Desai is writing often about Indian characters and focusing more on their psychological exile rather than their geographical dislocation. Her works reflect a diasporic sensibility through alienation within one's own culture rather than through physical migration alone, in that she looks at it as an existential psychological problem and inner dislocation more than outer one. Mukherjee celebrates the transformative power of immigration, uh, famously describing herself as an American author, not a hyphenated Indian American author, as we find that her characters reinvent themselves rather than remaining nostalgic for the past. When we talk about Lahiri, she often depicts immigration as a source of quiet internal conflict, particularly in the second generation uh, experiences, because she herself is a second generation kid, where children inherit both the benefits and burdens of their parents' cultural journey. So, friends, if we look at the fictional world of Jhumpa Lahiri, we find that it is quite enriching, quite intriguing, and quite nuanced. So, these are the references, friends. Um, we will again continue in the next class with one of the works by Jhumpa Lahiri, and till then, thank you very much for your company. Thank you.